Do you sometimes feel guilty when you're doing creative projects, like you should be focusing on something else? Something supposedly more important? Do you ever question whether DIY, art, and other creative endeavors have any place in our crisis-packed world? Are you aching to pick up your paintbrush, sit at your sewing machine, or add to your scrapbook, but you struggle to justify it with everything else you have to do? If so, friend, this video is for you. Hey, it's Mishka, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought we would hang out for a little while, do some beading together, and talk about how creativity factors into our adult lives. If you watched my May vlog, which now feels like forever ago, you may have noticed that I spent a significant amount of time beading little bracelets with colorful plastic beads. Truthfully, at that time, I was struggling to balance my work life and my creative life, and one of the ways I found reprieve from the constant stress I was feeling was doing this little project at my craft table. Nothing special, nothing groundbreaking, just for fun. Anyone witnessing this might wonder why a woman in her 30s is sitting around beading while there are so many important things to worry about. Maybe one of those pressing concerns would be, don't you have actual work to do? Don't you have to make money and make a living? Don't you have something useful to be doing? And I suggest these judgmental notions because those are the exact thoughts that were running through my own mind when I first sat down to try to do something crafty, but the more I sat there just making something, the quieter those thoughts became. Of course, generating enough money to pay the bills and fill the fridge and invest in my future and the future of my family and contribute to causes I care about each month, all of that can feel really heavy. On top of that, we're supposed to stay hydrated and fulfilled and this other long list of real-life adult things we're supposed to be doing. And I have it pretty good. I'm grateful. Actually, I'm extremely grateful for the life I have. But yes, this life, even though it's a good life, feels heavy sometimes. Like a step toward anything fun is thwarted by this unending list of things I'm supposed to be doing or supposed to be worried about right now. I chalk some of this up to the fact that I'm a remote freelancer. As a freelancer, when I'm not actively drawing in client leads, I'm missing out on income. The freedom to generate income goes hand in hand with the knowledge that doing other things means you're missing out on that money. And because I struggle with my money mindset sometimes, and I feel a bit of scarcity, sometimes it feels like there's no other thing I should be doing except working and trying to make money. Rejecting a new client or rejecting new work can trigger guilt even when I'm exhausted and I know I need time off. Because I should be grateful for work even if I don't feel aligned with it, right? In some ways, yes. In other ways, it's sort of a toxic mindset to be stuck in, but whatever your view, it's a fact that saying yes to one thing means saying no to something else. Not just for me, but in life in general, because time is our most precious resource. So in order to say yes to something and be present for it without regret, we feel we have to justify it in the grand scheme of things. So depending on your story that you're telling yourself about what's more important, it can be hard to prioritize creativity. So whatever your circumstance is, and everyone's is different, this video is about that moment when you're faced with the following dilemma. Is it worth it to sit down today and do something creative? In case you haven't figured it out, I'm here to make a case for a resounding yes to this question. I'm here to strongly suggest that doing the creative thing, even when there are other more important things going on, is always worth it. So grab a cup of tea or coffee or a glass of your favorite wine, and maybe a crafty project you've been meaning to start, because I'm hoping by the end of this video you'll feel more inspired to make it a regular part of your day. Creativity is important at every age, including when we're adults. Creation is intrinsic to human nature. We create tools and resources, we build communities, we develop relationships, we create little humans, we manifest and personalize environments and spaces at the most basic level, we make moments and memories and impressions. We're always creating. Even when you think you're not creative, you are creative. It's just the nature of being human. We know that playful moments and imaginative scenarios are an important part of a child's growth as they learn through the process of imitating, replicating, and manifesting the things they see, think, and learn about. There are endless variations of play and creativity depending on culture, society, a situation a child is growing up in, but it's a universal phenomenon that we begin creating this way and in our own way at an early age. Children usually have a higher capacity for this fantastic imaginative thinking because their brains aren't yet wired by a lifetime of thought patterns and synapses that limit which thoughts they'll entertain. So of course, this is a huge generalization. Every single child develops differently and has different thought patterns and ways of playing and expressing themselves, but in general, it's a characteristic of youth that our brains haven't fully wired into certain thought patterns yet. So what happens as we age? The brain and our perception of the world is shaped by experience. We accept certain things as true or most likely true based on our lives each day, as well as what we absorb through third-party sources. I can't make further blanket statements about what happens to people as they grow up because everyone has a vastly unique experience. And I'm not here to try to tell you you're a certain way, or that any group of people are a certain way, but I can tell you my experience as a creative person. In my early teens, I was so full of creative energy that I felt like I was going to explode. I wrote angsty, terrible poetry and prose, painted, I filled sketchbooks, I made collages, I did little craft projects. I was rapidly scanning my surroundings for new inspiration all the time. By the time I graduated high school, I actually had a group of friends who were, quote, into art. I felt very validated by the fact that my education and my free time were both centered around being creative. I had no rules about creativity, and I didn't care about my lack of skill. I just wanted to be making things. So it's no surprise that I felt like I found my place in the world in fashion school, where every waking moment was defined by creativity. I felt like life was one big celebration of creative spirit. I clung to that after graduation. Up to that point, I never had to think about how creative endeavors would fit into my daily life because my world revolved around creativity. It was so baked into my life that getting up in the start of the day, I would never think, oh, I should do something creative today because that would make me happy. It was always like my default actions were aligned with creative activities. That was my priority. So I decided, based on how much I loved writing, to try to get an internship for an editorial writing job, which ended up blossoming into the freelance writing career I have now. But as the years went by, I found it harder and harder to justify creative experimentation alongside all the obligations that were stacking up in my life. Any free time I did have, I wanted to be partying. I had a nightlife job too. I wanted to be traveling, just spending time with people, like having fun. And fun went from being in my sewing room all day to being out all night with my friends. But yeah, I mean, even amidst my piles of sewing and craft supplies, I still had my craft room, I had my sewing machine, I had my projects. But once rent was paid and I was done working for the day, I actually preferred scrolling through DIY blogs and looking at what other people were doing instead of making things. And I also started wondering how people I admired were making so many things. I was like, where the hell do they find the time to create and have a social life and pay the rent, you know? Of course, there would be that odd Saturday where I found myself sewing or painting or gluing something together or making an outfit to wear. But there was a stark difference here. Instead of creativity just feeling like second nature, I'd actually, for the first time in my life, have to force myself to sit down at my craft table to do something. I'd think, if I'm gonna focus my attention on anything, it should be something that generates income. That was my logic. Basically, I wasn't taking my own imagination and my creativity seriously anymore. I'd been telling myself there were more important things to focus on top of fostering a newfound habit of comparing myself to other creators. Priorities change as you go through life, that's normal. And for me, my priorities shifted away from creativity, and I think that's a common story. However, I've been aware my whole life that my sense of inner peace and balance and my sense of self is related to my creativity. And when I'm not creating, I feel off balance. I feel like I'm not quite me. So in my case, even when I was making a lot of money and working all the time and like hitting other goals in my life, if I wasn't actively utilizing my creative impulses, something felt off. I didn't feel like myself. Other exterior forces in my life impacted me so much and threw me off balance so hard that I felt like I lost myself completely. And I think when you don't have your center, you lose yourself. So for me, center is creativity. easy. That's not for everybody, but for me it definitely is. I've always known that I need to find ways to get back to that center of being a creative person no matter what, even if I have to kind of force myself a little bit to take those actions because they don't come naturally anymore. This requires doing some rewiring in the brain because you've already absorbed stories about what it takes to survive and thrive, and creativity might not fit into that. We may have been fed stories about, the 1 in a million chance of making a living off your art, which is completely outdated, by the way, totally not true. Just get on YouTube and watch studio vlogs of all these young women who are killing it, selling their art on Etsy and on their own websites. Or maybe we've watched other artists that we admired struggle. We might also just feel overshadowed by people who are more talented or who are more consistent. Maybe we've long since traded our artsy tools in for security, and now we're judging ourselves so hard that it just feels like we can't get back into that zone. Again, I can't speak for others, but you may relate to some version of this, that your younger self was boundlessly creative to the point where you didn't even have to think about it, and now, wherever you are in your life, whatever age, you're struggling to factor that creativity back into your life, and you know you need to, or you really want to. You're not alone in this. You're also not helpless in this scenario. I'm here to suggest that the best thing we can do for ourselves as creative people is take control and infuse creativity back into our days so we can start to feel like ourselves again. There are plenty of studies that suggest adult brains are more healthy when they're learning and increasing their capacity for creativity. Even something as simple as making beaded bracelets or scribbling on a page can relieve stress and inspire your imagination to expand. Creative projects can make you feel more patient and brighten your mood. They can help you relate to people around you and inspire feelings of confidence. When you're living a creative life, you might build friendships with other creative people or adopt a sense of accomplishment and purpose that you couldn't find in your income-generating activities. You might find yourself unexpectedly filled with joy even doing something simple every day. We've seen that this is a use it or lose it phenomenon, but summoning that imagination and creative energy that used to come naturally to you will inevitably help you strengthen that part of your brain and begin to revive it. I also think it's worth mentioning that doing fun creative projects can show future generations, like your kids or your nieces and nephews or just any young people, that they don't have to leave their creativity behind when they grow up. It sets a good example for others of any age, really, to be whimsical and light and not take everything so seriously. Also, if you are a creative person, you're infusing better energy into this world. And if you're anything like me, those moments when you're creating are the truest moments of your life, when you embrace who you are, apart from obligations, apart from all the things you think you should be doing. The bottom line is, if creativity feels good to you, that's justification enough to prioritize it. Even if you want to approach this from a workaholic perspective, it's a way to ensure you'll be even more focused on work when creativity time is over. If you're always thinking about work, your brain thinks you're always working, which is why so many of us are completely burnt out. You need balance. And by the way, you don't have to be an artist or consider yourself, quote, talented to include more art and creativity into your life or to feel justified doing that. Think of the tiniest little sketch on a napkin that brightened someone's day, or a mural with a message that inspired someone to make a change in their life. There's really no limit to the power of creativity and what it can do and the ripple effect it can create. And you don't need to be making high-impact, life-saving art to justify making it. Sometimes the art or the project or the thing you make is the end result without trying to do anything further. Every single artist or creative hobbyist started just by picking up the tool of their choice and saying yes to the messy, imperfect, unpredictable creative process, having no idea what the real result would be. It's about so much more than the medium or the cute thing you end up making, or what someone else thinks about it. Whether you're doing guided art prompts or art therapy or casual sketching or group projects or any kind of creating, all that matters is that you're doing something that lights you up. Forget about cool, forget about what's for kids versus what's for adults, forget about being organized or perfect about it, forget about documenting it for now, and remember just to be open to experimenting, to trying new things, and be open to not being very good at things when you first start trying them. And of course, don't forget to celebrate your artistic accomplishments along the way, whether you do your first painting in a certain medium, or you fill a whole sketchbook, or maybe you just make something a couple days in a row. Maybe you just get that first pencil sketch on the page, whatever it is. It all counts, and it should all be celebrated. There are so many ways to incorporate an artistic hobby into your life. In the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the most powerful sections for me was all about celebrating your personal values and mission statement. Your mission statement is like a definitive beacon that guides your behaviors and your responses to things that happen in your life. This represents that center I was talking about that you can always return to despite what's happening in your life. If one of your values or your pillars in life is creativity, that becomes a safe space to return to. No matter what's happening, you can continue to live with fulfillment and purpose if you satisfy that center, and if you're actively holding space in that center, if you will. For some people, this means hours of creating intricate pieces or studying the techniques of fine art masters. For others, it means gluing pom-poms onto office supplies or coloring with their kids. Again, there's no right way or wrong way to work creativity into your life. But if it's one of your values and it's important to you, you should find a way to make it just as pressing an inclusion on your calendar as anything else that you consider an obligation. Please don't worry about making good art or making something interesting or cool or viral or Pinterest worthy. Just make things. You don't have to have an end goal in order to begin creating each day. For now, the goal is creation itself. And hey, you may discover a new hobby that turns into a passion or a small business, which is fine too, which is amazing. Just remember that to enjoy the benefits artistic hobbies and artistic activity, creative activity can have in your life, you do not have to monetize the activity. If there is one rule, it's to not spend all of your precious creation time looking at what other people are making. When I first found my creative activity was starting to be limited and I was deprioritizing it, I said that I would spend a lot of time looking at what other people were doing, and I would think in my head, oh, I'm getting inspired, or I need to see what other creative people are doing, but I would just end up comparing myself to them and feeling more frustrated, and it was just very discouraging. Getting inspired can feel like an important step, but just remember that it's actually just distracting you from tapping back into your creativity if you're doing that during designated creative time. If you have a certain set of hours a week that you can get into your studio and make something, but you kick that off by looking at your phone and scrolling through what other people are doing, you're robbing yourself of the muse if you're falling into that comparison trap. While it's true that everything we do is sort of influenced by what we've absorbed on some subconscious level, and creating in a vacuum isn't possible, making something from your own source or muse is more satisfying. You're gonna feel more proud of whatever you do. This kind of creativity can help you flex that creative muscle over time and strengthen it. If you're extremely busy, and I know many of us are, almost all of us feel that way, that there's just so much we need to focus on every day to stay well and stay, alive and stay in a good headspace. If you're struggling to find time, open your calendar now and at least put 1 hour a week on the calendar. Carve out an hour, carve out a few minutes a day, whatever works for you, where you're going to spend some time making things. Start out with maybe you have a shirt or a dress you want to mend that has been ripped and you just want to mend it. Even something as simple as that can make you feel more creative. And maybe the next step from there is there's a holiday or a birthday coming up and you make a card instead of buying one. It doesn't have to be anything complicated to just get started. You don't have to post photos of it, you don't have to share it, you just have to get into that habit of making. Also, if you need accountability, you can participate in online challenges or just ask a friend to check in once a month and share what you've been working on. You can join DIY groups, you can do in-person or online meetups, you can create with your kids or your partner or your parents or your grandparents, you can make things together with other people, around the kitchen table or on Zoom, whatever. Just find a way that works for you. Now, I've been on my soapbox for a while here, but before I go, a final thought on why making time for creativity is so important if I haven't driven the point home by now. I actually want to suggest that the act of creating sends ripples of good energy into the world, which can inspire change and healing and love and all kinds of positive impact. Think of a time when you saw a beautiful piece of art and it filled up your soul for a second. We need more of this energy in the world right now. Not just physical beauty, but things that were created by humans that express something. We need more creative output, just like we need more tangible, direct solutions to our problems as a society. Spending 100% of our time on the tangible, real-world stuff, quote unquote, leaves us drained and empty, and then we're not much use to the people who rely on us in our real life. If we're not satisfying our creative, playful, whimsical selves, we will be too burnt out to effectively show up in the rest of our lives. We should just never discount the impact of creativity and art and DIY culture in the grand scheme of things. These are true forces of nature. It even goes to the scientific level. Just take a quick peek into the power of thought and imagination in the realm of quantum science. That's some wild stuff. The brain's power and the potential of creativity is almost unfathomable. I hope this video has served as a reminder that it's okay, that it's important, that it's valid, that it's wonderful to do creative things. And it might be a hidden key that you've been missing to feel more alive, fulfilled, expressed, calm, happy, confident, just more like yourself. So the next time you sit down at your craft table or pull out your sketchbook on the train, do so with absolute certainty that the act itself is worth your time. And if you're not making much time for creative things these days, consider this your official invitation to mark those sessions on the calendar, even if it's a few minutes a day or an hour a week. And I hope with all my heart that you'll be able to tap back into that creative energy you've been missing, make it a part of your life again, and just feel more fulfilled and happy. Because really, that's the point here. I welcome you to leave a comment below and let me know what you think. If you've been struggling to stay creative in the face of a busy schedule, or anxiety or lack of confidence, let me know what's been holding you back. Also, if you have any tips to share with us on how you make creativity and art and experimentation and whimsy a regular part of your life, please share them below. And if you're working on something you're excited about right now, drop a link and let us know. I'd love to check out what you guys are doing. Finally, don't forget to give this video a like to help me reach more creative souls like you so we can gather up like a happy little DIY family and support one another. Of course, you're invited to check out my other content and subscribe if you're new to the channel. I mostly post vlogs and DIY videos along with inspiration for creative living. I ramble a lot about this stuff and I'd love to hang out with you again. Until the next video, stay safe, stay creative, and don't hesitate to do what makes you feel whole.